All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining for our third concurrent session of the day. It's just about 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with a couple opening remarks. Good afternoon, and welcome to the third concurrent session of the day, Student Engagement in Remote Learning, Note-Taking for Quant-Heavy Classes. Our presenter today is Anisha Nyatee from Endicott College. Professor Nyatee joined Endicott College School of Business in spring 2018. Anisha is passionate about teaching and research. She teaches courses in microeconomics and international corporate finance. Her current research focuses on corporate capital structure decisions, mainly looking at how firms choose to finance investments in the face of competition. Professor Nyatee is also interested in firms' capital structure choices based on their country of operations level of financial development. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to our presenter now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brian. So my name is Anisha, and I teach at Endicott College. I teach courses across finance mostly, and then the microeconomics, typically for freshmen and sophomores. I will, through my presentation, I will talk about some things that I have implemented over the last year that have helped my students and helped me find my peace as an effective educator. So my talk will be about student engagement in the remote setting, mainly focusing on helping students keep up with the lecture as well as keep up with note-taking, because I think most students, at least at our college, really struggle with knowing how to take notes. And my experience has been that with COVID and having to go remote last spring, and then hybrid and remote again this spring, I've actually felt that I've used that to my advantage to teach my students a skill, a life skill, that's note taking. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Let me see. Okay. And I'll get started right here. Okay. So student engagement in remote setting, mostly focusing on note-taking and quant-heavy classes. So a little bit about me. My name is Anisha. As I said, I'm a professor of finance and economics at Endicott College. I teach courses mostly across finance and then the microeconomics for freshmen and sophomores. I have my contact information here. If any of you choose to get more information or have questions for me beyond the session, then please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to talk more and share anything that may potentially help you. So in the spring of 2020, there was a sudden change to remote instruction, and as faculty, we were expected to flip to remote instruction almost overnight. We had very limited resources because prior to spring 2020, if you told me that I could work from home, that whole concept was alien to me. I mean, how does a professor work from home? But anyway, we had to flip to remote, and we had very limited resources to work within. I really struggled the second half of spring of 2020, mostly because I felt I was not being effective. I wasn't prepared to teach remotely, and I knew the population that I deal with, I knew my students will struggle because there are lots of holes in their knowledge in terms of math, and then I teach math-heavy classes. So I was trying to stay afloat by delivering content because I was contractually bound to do that. But I was really struggling because I knew deep down that I was not really being effective, or for that matter, serving my students fulfill what they came into my class with. So spent the summer of 2020 attending a ton of institutes on remote teaching. We went through some certification through the college on remote teaching, but I really found that it wasn't really helpful for me, mostly because it was directed towards the humanities and liberal studies. And I felt nobody really addressed, at least the sessions that I attended, really quant heavy classes were not addressed at all. So I came out of the summer with some certification around best practices of remote teaching, but I really felt that I didn't get much that I could put into practice in my own classes. Came into the fall of 2020, and I taught 4 classes. I had 2 hybrid and 2 in-person classes. My in-person classes were smooth sailing, but my hybrid classes, I found my students really struggled, mostly between having to switch between between being in person one day and then being remote the other day. So when they were in person, they were on top of the material, but when they were remote, they were kind of like they're not there. They'd have their cameras on, they would have it off, they would, take a walk in the middle. I don't know, it was tough. And then when the remote cohort came in the next class, they really were not able to join the dots between what was taught when they were remote and how what we're doing in class today builds on that. So they found it really difficult to keep up with the lecture notes and note taking. Typically in a pre-COVID semester, I would print out the lecture notes and hand it out to my students. And then we would together in class work with filling in the gaps in the lecture notes. So if it was a problem around finding equilibrium price and quantity for a microeconomics class, I would draw the graph on the board and then we would work through that problem step by step. And up until having to go remote, I thought that worked beautifully. As I learned when I went remote and I started to implement some of these strategies that I will talk about for the rest of my time, I really think that the technology that I have implemented has actually helped my students better than me being in the classroom and writing on a whiteboard. So with COVID, I was not able to print out the lecture notes and give it to my students. So I would find that when we did the, especially in the hybrid setting, I would find that some students came in without printed lecture notes because they felt that they could just follow along on their computer screens. Some came in with tablets because they felt that they could write on the screen of their tablet. And with all of that, I think somewhere students struggled with consolidating all their notes in one place. So what I did was I put all my lecture notes online and I required students to bring printouts of those lecture notes because I was not able to give them the printouts myself. And I printed out a copy for myself. And then I shared with them exactly what I was writing on, as it was the same as what they had in front of them. When they saw what I was writing on was exactly what was in front of them, I think that helped them compile their thoughts in a way that I was modeling for them. And I encouraged them to really follow exactly the way I was modeling for them because it was a logical thought process. When they go back to look at their notes, everything is organized in a way that makes sense. In the hybrid setting, I also found that because one cohort was always away and the other in class, at my college, I was limited to a 4x4 whiteboard space that I could write on because only that portion of the whiteboard was being captured by the camera for the cohort that was remote. So I found that that space was very limited, especially as we worked through really lengthy problems in economics and in finance. So I had to change gears a little bit as I saw that this was not really being effective in how I was, at least in what I was trying to get across to my students. So I did some research on how I could use technology to better help my students follow along and learn. I played with the idea of joining my classes as a co-host. So I shared the Zoom link with all my students and I shared the Zoom link with myself on my personal email and I joined as a co-host so that I could write. So I joined from my iPad and I would write on the iPad so that they could then copy those steps down. But my writing isn't great anyway. And then having to write on a tablet, it's only worse. So I actually encountered more problems with having students follow along because then they were like, well, professor, we don't understand what you're writing. We can't read your writing. And we lose a lot of instructional time just trying to navigate that. So that didn't work very well for me. So I searched online for products that would aid in remote learning, and I came across the document camera, and that was a real game changer for me. When I thought back to my graduate school days, I actually used these when I was an instructor in graduate school, and I couldn't understand why I didn't think of this earlier. So it's a pretty simple device, right? I think it's pretty neat, actually. It's compact. You can carry it along with you. I use these for my remote classes as well as for my hybrid classes, because now I'm just teaching the students how to take notes. So it's available in a wide range of prices. I bought myself a pretty cheap one on Amazon, but the price ranges from anything between like $60 to like $700. So if your school gives you money to invest in some technology for remote teaching, you can get a pretty nice one. The one I have is not that fancy, but it does the job. So it captures images in real time and then projects that image on the computer screen. And then I just share that computer screen with my whole class. And as I write on the lecture notes, the image on the computer screen gets updated in real time. So it's like I'm filling in the lecture notes just as my students are filling them in. And we're writing on the paper that looks exactly alike. I'm writing on the lecture notes that I have made available to them. So they know exactly what to underline, where to write, wherever there is a problem, the solution is right under that problem, as opposed to when they were writing notes on their own. Even in the in-person setting, when I was solving the problem on the board, students were writing them all over their notebooks, and then they didn't know which solution corresponded to which problem. So this really helped them arrange their thoughts and their notes in a practical and logical fashion, so that when they went back to study for the exam, it was all there. So students see exactly the same lecture notes that you have in front of them, and you can fill in the gaps in real time as you work through the problem with them. Since I introduced the use of this technology, my classes have experienced student engagement like never before. It has been even better than pre-COVID, when we were fully in person, because now students really want to follow along with you because you're showing them how to. So this I thought was great. And then, like I said, I use them for all of my remote classes, and I also use them for my hybrid class. I just project the same thing on the screen in class, and I share my screen with the cohort that isn't in class. So that way, both cohorts are seeing exactly the same thing. It's not like the cohort that's away is missing out. So some benefits that have come from this: students struggle with what to write in their notes. When I found that when I was completely in person, you have these discussions and you talk a lot around, various topics. And especially nowadays, I find students are unable to separate information that they need from information that they don't. So either they have a lot written down or they have nothing written down, and neither of those extremes is beneficial. So being able to really guide them through note-taking helps them see how to weed out. We still have the lengthy discussions. We still talk about topics beyond just solving a particular problem, but at least they know what goes in the notes and then what they need to focus on as they study for the exam. So being able to fill the lecture notes with them in real time has helped them learn how to take notes in a class that deals with very heavy content. I mean, economics content is difficult. Finance content is difficult. So it's really helped them to consolidate their thoughts in a way that makes sense. And together with the content, I'm also teaching them a life skill, which is essentially note-taking, weeding out information that matters from information that doesn't. They have concise notes to look back to and study from. So far, I've just told you about what I have implemented. I will now just stop sharing this screen, and I will share with you an example of what this looks like. So just give me 1 minute. right? So this is what it looks like when it projects to your computer screen. And this is some model lecture notes that I use in my class. So this particular problem deals with calculating oh, I guess my screen sharing is paused for some reason. Okay. So this is just an example of some of the lecture notes that I have printed out for my class. I print them out like a book for myself, and I require that students print out the same lecture notes prior to coming to class. And then as I write here, it captures the image in real time on the screen, and students can then follow through. So for something like this is a problem that deals with welfare economics, where we are calculating consumer surplus and producer surplus and total surplus. I have the work right here, but sometimes students find it difficult to navigate this, and they don't really understand why certain calculations are done the way they are. So this allows me to walk them through this slide, and I write down any notes that I may have pertaining to the slide right under it, and they can do the same. So for example, if I wanted to teach them what the area of the graph that was pertaining to consumer surplus, I would show them that it is this triangle here. And then I would point that arrow there, so they're able to make connections from what is in the notes to what is in the picture and why a particular calculation is the way it is. And then I would maybe write here saying area of a triangle is half base times height. So they can see me write, and they're taking notes in real time with me. So their notes begin looking very similar to what my notes look like. And then it's all in one place. Again, it's not all over the place. And then they can go back to this when they are preparing for the exam, right? So then this allows me to then walk them through saying, well, this is the triangle. The base of that triangle goes from 0 to 100, which is that point on the x-axis. So it's half, the base is 100. That's where this comes from. And then the height goes from 400, and this is 200. So 400 minus 200. And that's half 100 times 200, which is exactly what is right here, right? And then I would maybe make an arrow that would make the connection for them. So this I have found to be extremely effective for my classes, especially when I'm teaching loaded content that requires a lot of, this is a fairly simple problem, but when we're talking about corporate finance and international finance, we're dealing with multi-step math problems. And this has really worked beautifully for my students. I have had feedback from my students that they really appreciate this, and that since I started using this even in the hybrid setting, stuff has started making a lot more sense for the cohort that isn't even physically present in class for that particular day. So that's all I have to share with you. If you have any questions about anything that I may have covered that you want clarifications on, I'll be happy to address those. If you would like me to share a link of where I just typed document camera on Amazon, and we came across, I mean, they'll give you a whole variety if this is something that you want to explore. Like I said, mine's a pretty cheap one, so they don't see colored images, but you can get a pretty nice one if your college is willing to sponsor it for $300 or $400. They go up to like $700 or $800, which I think is a bit much. Mine is like $60. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anisha. That was great. We do have a couple of quick questions. And actually one of those questions was if you did have the link to where you got your.
Yeah, absolutely. Should I just put it in the chat? I'll just stop sharing the screen for a minute.
Yeah, I think if you put it in the chat, that's great. And I think as long as your chat is set to all panelists and attendees, then everyone can see it. So I think it might be set to me, since you and I were talking.
Yeah, let me just make it to all, and then I'll just share the link here.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Give me 1 minute. I think I have it open because I was trying to remember how much I paid for it. So I'll just share. The price of mine one has gone up. It's like $80 now, but I'll share this link with. I'll share the link for the one I have. It works pretty well. It's like a Korean made one, but it does fine.
That's perfect. You got a steal of a deal then. And then
Should work.
I see that. So yep, the link's in the chat for everyone if you guys are interested. And then we have a couple other quick questions that are in here as well. And one of them was, do you have any suggestions for how to handle when students aren't able to print out their notes? Maybe they don't have a printer easily accessible to them.
For our college, I send them to the, I can order the notes through the copy center at our college. So if a student doesn't have access to a printer, then they let me know and I can let the copy center know. I just don't order them ahead of time because sometimes students don't want to buy all of it at the same time. But if a student doesn't have a printer, then I put in a request at the copy center and they have to pay like $7 or something to buy the notes from the copy center. So the copy center will make a book out of it and give it to them.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. And we got another question here, actually. Going back to your notes, and someone asked, do you save your lecture notes, like the ones you create with your notations? And
yeah, you can. So this gadget allows you to save it. It's actually, it has like a scanner built in. So as you write, if there's a key, let me just see if I can pull it up, or there's a button here. So let me share here. I'll just share my screen one more time.
Perfect. That sounds great.
So you see here, there are all these various things that you can do with it. So you can take pictures of your notes in real time. So if you do multi-PDF, then that whole day's lecture notes are saved as one PDF. You can record your whole lecture as well. So as you're writing and going through the lecture notes, if you press record, it will record the session for that day. And then if students ask for it, that you can make it available if you so wish, or you can just put it up on either Blackboard or Canvas so it's there for students to go back to. I just don't make that freely available because then I think that the class goes from synchronous to asynchronous, because then students start relying on the fact that you'll make it available on campus so they don't need to come to class. Right?
Okay,
So the only time I make it available is if a request comes in through my dean saying that this student is super sick and is not going to be able to make it to class. So make the notes available to them. And then I make it available to that student.
Gotcha. And you actually just answered another question right there, asking if you post those kind of like anticipating, you post them initially, or you kind of wait for those requests to come in. And I think
if you post them initially, then you don't have to deal with the daily traffic of students reaching out to you. But my only fear is that if I do it, then students just become asynchronous because they're like, oh, the whole lecture is recorded. And I don't have an attendance policy. So I really find it hard to then get them to come to class. So I don't make it available freely.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I'm sure that helps you and your students really get that engagement going. So perfect. I don't see any other questions in here right now. Actually, we might have one more. Sorry, hold on. No, just not a question, just a statement. They're kind of agreeing with you, just saying that often students will do the recording asynchronously and not come to the synchronous class.
Yeah, so even for my Zoom classes, I record it on Zoom, but I don't make it available unless like a student has a genuine reason that comes through my administration saying that, this is legitimate.
Gotcha.
Sometimes students just start missing class and then I don't want to make that a habit for them. So.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm guessing you can just share that individually with the specific student if they're sick, rather than posting it on Blackboard for the whole class if you want. Yep. So.
Exactly. If there are any more questions, I'll be happy to, chat. My email is, I can share my email on the chat as well.
Perfect. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to have a couple of quick wrap up things here. But so just as a quick wrap up for everyone, the next concurrent session is going to begin at 3 o'clock today. You can view the chat for, I'm going to post the session meeting room links in just one moment and you can also visit the conference website for a complete list of sessions and their descriptions. While accessing that website, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to talk to the Hawks representative as well. And then also, I'm going to share a poll just 1 second with everyone, and it'll probably take you less than 30 seconds if you guys don't mind, just giving us some feedback on your day and the presentations. So,
Brian, I put my email to all panelists, but I believe some people don't see it.
I'll try and paste it in as well. Okay, I just pasted that in. So if anyone does not have the email, just let me know. And I'm going to paste the poll now for everyone. All right, so that poll's live, and I'm going to also paste in the meeting links for the next round of sessions. So Anisha, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. And thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. We actually do have another quick question that came in.
Sure. Yeah.
How do you make PDFs accessible for a student with an accommodation?
It depends on what kind of accommodation.
Yeah, the attendee was Kristen. So Kristen, if you want to kind of expand on that, definitely feel free to. And I actually don't think the person that asked that's still in the chat, or in the meeting. So
yeah, most of my students, the accommodations are like extra time for tests. So I haven't really encountered like students maybe with visual impairment or things like that. So I really haven't thought about that.
okay. I'm just, one other person just asked for the document camera link again. Might be something where some people join late.
Yeah.
You have to see the old chats. So.
Let me go back to the chat. Do you want me to post it? I can do it.
I actually think I got it right here. Okay. If you want to, definitely. Oh, never mind. Someone already got it. We're good.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. So thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. As I mentioned, the next session is going to begin at 3 p.m. and there's links in the chat for the other sessions going on at 3 p.m. as well. So don't hesitate to join us then.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Anisha. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.